For those who don't know, in the middle of the world's largest and driest deserts, there are places where it really seems impossible for anything to survive. All you'll see is sand. You'll also experience extreme heat. There's almost no rain here. But what's surprising is that in the middle of some deserts, water appears, along with trees and small human communities. They're like small pockets of life hidden in the middle of the endless desert. But where can you find them? How were they formed? And what do they look like? In this video, we'll take you to places where it seems impossible to survive. But before we start the discussion, I'd like to ask you for a like and please subscribe to our channel. This is a huge help for us content creators. So let's get started. And our first destination is Vilma in the country of Niger. When you see this place from above, it looks like a tiny dot in the middle of the vast Sahara Desert. But for a very long time, Vilma has been very important for people traveling in the desert. Back then, before there were modern vehicles and airplanes, camel caravans were the main way to travel across the Sahara. Sometimes the journey would take several weeks or even months. And because of the extreme heat in the desert, just one wrong direction could cost a person their life. That's why oases were very important back then. An oasis is a place in the desert that has water. And when there's water, there are trees, plants, animals, and people. In Vilma, it's not just water that they have. This place is also known for its salt. According to UNESCO and some historical records about the Sahara trade routes, Vilma was one of the centers of the salt trade in Africa for a very long time. In ancient times, salt was extremely valuable. It wasn't just used as a seasoning, it was also used to preserve food before refrigerators existed. That's why in some places, salt was almost as valuable as gold. In Vilma, people manually collected salt from shallow pits filled with salty water. Even today, some locals still do this, even though the climate is extremely hot. When you look at the place, it's not the kind of oasis you see in cartoons or movies with lots of water and plenty of plants. It looks simpler and harsher. There are palm trees, wells, and salt pits. Then around it, it's all sand again and tall dunes. But even so, it still made it possible to travel through one of the most dangerous parts of the Sahara Desert. Without oases like Vilma, many old trade routes in Africa might not have been established. But Africa isn't the only place with such unique locations. In South America, there's also an oasis that seems unreal when you first see it. This is Huacachina in Peru. At first glance, it looks like an edited picture. Just imagine a vast desert filled with nothing but sand. Then suddenly there's a small green lake in the middle, surrounded by trees and a few houses. It's like someone planted a small paradise in the middle of a lifeless place. Huacachina can be found near the city of Ica in Peru. According to Peru's official tourism information, this is one of the few natural oases in the entire Western Hemisphere, and that's what makes this place so special. When most people hear the word oasis, they usually think of the Sahara Desert right away. But Huacachina is actually on the other side of the world. According to local tourism reports, the water in the lagoon comes from underground water currents that rise up to the surface. Because of this, a small lake formed in the middle of the dry desert. And since there was water, trees and plants started to grow around it. When you look at it from afar, the difference is very clear. On one side, there's only dry sand. On the other side, there's water and the trees are green. It's like two different worlds suddenly came together. Now, Huacachina is a famous tourist destination. A lot of people come here to go sandboarding, ride a dune buggy, or simply to see the oasis in the middle of the desert. But in the past, this place was more important because it provided water and rest for people passing through the difficult terrain. And it's not just people who benefit from it. According to official information from the Peru tourism authorities, there are also migratory birds that temporarily stop here. This means it's not just a beautiful sight. It is also a small pocket of life in the middle of intense heat and a dry environment. And that is the most amazing thing about oases. In a place where it's almost impossible to live, water suddenly appears. And when there's water, life follows. Let's move on to Egypt. Most people, when they hear Egypt, immediately think of the pyramids and the Nile River. but far from those famous places. There are parts of the desert that seem to have their own world. One of these is the Kharga Oasis. If you look at the map of Egypt, you'll see that it is surrounded by a vast, dry desert. But in the midst of that intense heat, there is a long stretch of land with water, trees, farms, and small communities. This is not just a simple oasis with a single well and a few trees. The area looks like a long green line in the middle of the desert. According to Britannica and some historical records of Egypt, this is the largest of the country's oases. It stretches for more than 100 miles from north to south. In ancient times, this place was extremely important because it served as a stopover for caravans crossing the desert. Because the Sahara and the western desert of Egypt are so vast, traveling back then was extremely difficult. There was no GPS, no modern vehicles. If you ran out of water in the middle of the desert, there was almost no hope. That's why oases like Kharga were like a lifeline for travelers. This is where they would rest. This is where they got their water and also where they traded goods. According to UNESCO, this place was an important part of the trade routes that connected North Africa and some parts of Central Africa. In other words, this was a trade route for a very long time. But it wasn't just trade that was left here. The place is also full of history. According to archaeologists, people have been living in the area since prehistoric times. Back when there were no modern cities and countries, old temples, Roman settlements, and ancient tombs were found around the oasis. One of the well-known structures built here is the Temple of Ibis, which is connected to the time of the Persian ruler Darius I. This just shows that even though it is in the middle of the desert, it was still an important place for various ancient empires. And there's another surprising detail about the Kharga. According to some scientific studies and UNESCO reports, it's possible that in the distant past, this place was wetter and greener than it is today. There is evidence suggesting that there were once large lakes in some parts of the western desert of Egypt. This means that the area, which is now all sand, may have had much more water and vegetation thousands of years ago. Even today, Kharga Oasis is still alive. There are plantations of dates, olives, wheat, and various vegetables. And because of the deep wells and irrigation systems, farming continues even though it is surrounded by dry desert. In other words, it still serves the true purpose of an oasis. It gives life to a place where it should almost be impossible to live. Now let's move on to the Siwa Oasis. This can be found near the border of Egypt and Libya, and even though it's modern times now, many visitors still feel like they're far away from the normal world. In the vast desert, date trees, springs, salt lakes, and small human communities suddenly appear. It's like there's a hidden world in the middle of the sand. According to Britannica, there are around 200 natural springs in Siwa. Because of this, farming and living in the area became possible even though it is surrounded by intense heat and dry land. Siwa is well known for its dates and olive trees. Even today, olive oil and date farming are still a major part of the livelihood there. When you see the oasis from above, you can clearly see the big difference in color. Around it, there is only pale desert. But in the middle, you can see the green area full of plants and water. But the reason why Siwa became so famous back then was not just because of food or water. It also became an important religious site in ancient times. This was where the famous Oracle of Amun was once found. In the ancient world, many people believed that this temple was connected to the gods. According to historical records, Alexander the Great even visited here after he conquered Egypt. And that's the reason why Siwa became famous in history. Just imagine that. An oasis in the middle of a vast desert. But it was visited by one of the most famous leaders in ancient history. But aside from its rich history, Siwa's culture is also special. Even today, there are communities there that still use the Berber language and have their own traditions. You can also see old mud brick houses and ancient settlements in the area, built on elevated parts of the land to make them easier to defend against danger. In ancient times, security was very important in oases. If you had water in the desert, there would surely be others who wanted to take it. That's why many oases back then were like natural fortresses. And that's what's unique about Siwa. It's not just a simple stop in the middle of the desert. It's like a whole little world that lives separately from its surroundings of nothing but heat, salt, and sand. Let's go to another place. In some parts of the Sahara Desert, there are also places that, when you see them from above, look unreal. In the middle of almost endless sand, a green patch of land suddenly appears, full of farms and human communities. One of the most unique examples of this is Al Kufra in Libya. When you're on a plane or you look at satellite images of the area, you'll immediately notice its unusual appearance. All around it is just barren desert. But in the middle, there are green circles that look like someone planted giant plants in the sand. And the reason for this is water. Very deep water hidden beneath the desert. Al Kufra is located in the southeastern part of Libya, inside the Libyan desert, one of the hottest and driest places in the world. According to Britannica and several geographic records, it is a large oasis system, with towns, farms, and palm groves clustered together within a vast depression in the desert. In ancient times, Al Kufra was important because it was one of the stops on the caravan routes in the Sahara. In other words, it was one of the few places where people crossing the extremely dark and dangerous desert could get water and rest. And in the Sahara, if you control the water, you also control trade and the movement of people. That's why Al Kufra became an important place for a long time. It didn't become famous because it was beautiful or easy to reach. It became important because it was one of the few places where people could survive in the midst of extreme heat. But because the place was important, it also became a center of conflict and control in the past. According to historical records, it became the base of the Senussi movement in the late 19th century. It was a religious and political movement in North Africa. During Italy's colonization of Libya, the place also became a target of military operations. This just shows how important this oasis was in the past. On the map, it looks small, but in real life, it was a strategic point in the middle of the desert. Now, Al Kufra looks different compared to before. Before, you would mostly see wells, camel caravans, and palm trees here. But now, there are modern irrigation systems that use water from underground. According to some satellite images from the European Space Agency, you can see large, circular farms in the middle of the desert from above. These circles are formed because of mechanized irrigation systems that rotate while watering the crops. That's why from above it really looks like an engineered battle against the desert. It's like they're forcing the area, which should just be all sand, to become green. And that's the most unique thing about Al Kufra. It's not just an oasis with a small lake. It's like a permanent piece of life built in a place where almost nothing should survive. But not all oases in the Sahara are in the flat desert. Some are also hidden between mountains. One of these is Timia in the country of Niger. Timia looks different compared to the usual image of an oasis that we often see in movies. There isn't a vast sea of sand surrounding it. Instead, you can find it within the Air Mountains in northern Niger. According to UNESCO, this place is like a small pocket of life hidden inside the Sahara Desert. And that's exactly what makes Timia unique. Instead of just flat desert, it's surrounded by rocks, mountains, canyons, and deep valleys. In the middle of the hard and dry rocks, trees, farms, and small gardens suddenly appear. It's like there's a secret valley in the middle of the Sahara. According to UNESCO and some environmental studies, the mountain landscape helps collect and distribute water to certain parts of the area. Because of this, it becomes possible for plants to grow, even though the surroundings are very dry. In Timia, there are farms growing dates, citrus fruits, figs, and other crops. According to some land management records, there have been small irrigated gardens in the area for more than 100 years. In ancient times, people here only used shallow wells and simple methods of drawing water using animals. But in modern times, motorbikes and motor pumps are also used in some parts of the oasis. And even though it's in the middle of one of the hottest regions in Africa, farming still continues. That's the reason why Timia is special. This isn't just a simple oasis that just survived the desert. It's a genuine working landscape. People are growing crops, there are gardens, there are fruit trees, and there's a community that has learned to live in a place that's almost impossible for most. And Timia just shows that the Sahara isn't just endless sand dunes. There are also parts with mountains, valleys, and hidden places where life quietly goes on, even though they're surrounded by heat and dry land. If that impressed you, this will amaze you even more. This is Crescent Lake in China. At first glance, it looks like someone just dropped a small lake in the middle of a vast desert. You can find it near the city of Dunhuang in Gansu Province, China. And what's really unique about it is that it's surrounded by tall sand dunes, as if the lake could be swallowed up at any moment. But despite this, the water has remained there for a very long time. When you see Crescent Lake from above, you'll immediately notice why it became famous. Its shape is long and curved like a moon lying in the middle of the desert. That's why it's called Crescent Lake. Around it, you'll see almost nothing but sand. There's no gradual change from desert to forest. Suddenly there's water in the middle of the heat and dust. And that's exactly why it doesn't seem real when you see it for the first time. But beauty isn't the only reason why this place became important. In ancient times, Dunhuang was a vital part of the Silk Road. According to historical records and information from UNESCO, this was one of the main stops for traders and travelers journeying between China, Central Asia, and the Middle East. Just imagine that. After crossing the vast desert, suddenly an oasis would appear with water and a place to rest. That's why for many travelers back then, Crescent Lake and the entire oasis area of Dunhuang were very important. It wasn't just a beautiful sight, it was a part of survival. For many centuries, the place also became a center of culture, religion, and trade. There were temples, caravan routes, and communities that formed around it. And even though it was surrounded by shifting sands, the lake still remained. That's why there were some old beliefs back then that the spring would never be covered by sand, and that it would never dry up. But in modern times, the situation started to change. According to some scientific studies, the water in Crescent Lake decreased because of the decline in groundwater levels and the use of water around the region. This means that even oases that seemed everlasting for a long time can still be affected. And this just shows how important water is in the desert. If the water disappears, the whole oasis could also disappear. But until now, Crescent Lake remains one of the most unique oases in the world because it's not just a simple lake in the desert. It's like a thin strip of life that struggles to survive while being surrounded by a moving sea of sand. Despite this, there are also oases that are not just about water, but also about the way people live in the desert. Let's go to Gadames in Libya. This is not like other oases that are just full of trees and wells. Gadames is like an entire city specially designed to survive extreme heat. It is located near the borders of Libya, Tunisia, and Algeria. Around it, you can see the dry desert and rocky parts of the Sahara. But in the middle of it, there is an oasis and an old city that has been inhabited for a long time. According to UNESCO and Britannica, this is one of the oldest oasis cities in the Sahara. In ancient times, it was important to the trans-Saharan trade routes. Caravans carrying various products from Africa to the Mediterranean regions used to pass through here. That's why it became a center of trade in the middle of the desert. But the most amazing thing about Gadames is not just its history, but how the entire city was built. When you walk through the old part of Gadames, you'll immediately notice that many of the pathways are narrow and have roofs. They did that so people wouldn't be directly hit by the intense heat of the sun. It's like a natural air conditioning system from ancient times. Some houses are built close together so that less heat gets inside. There are also terraces on the upper floors that were once used for getting around and for other community activities. In short, every part of the city was built to fight the desert heat. It's not just about design. It's really a survival strategy. According to UNESCO, the oasis and the palm groves around the city are important parts of it. The trees are not just for decoration. They help provide shade, food, and protection to the area. And that's the reason why Gadames is special. It's not just a simple oasis with water in the middle of the sand. It's an entire system for how to survive in one of the harshest environments in the world. From the water, architecture, to the way people move inside the city, Everything is adapted to the intense heat of the Sahara. And this just shows that sometimes the real struggle in the desert isn't just about finding water, but also about learning how to survive here. Despite this, in the desert, the most important thing is not gold, not stones, and not oil, but water. Because when there is water, there is life. And in Egypt, there is one more place that proves that even in the middle of the driest land, a beautiful place can be created. And this is the Dakhla Oasis. No, this is not a small oasis with just one well and a few trees. Dakhla is like a long green belt inside the western desert of Egypt. Around it, the land is very dry. But inside the oasis, there are farms, houses, ancient ruins, and places that have been inhabited by people for a long time. According to archaeological studies, Dakhla is one of the largest oases to the west of the Nile Valley. And the reason why this place thrived is because of the water hidden underground. This is not water from a large river, nor is it water from the rain. This is called fossil groundwater. This means it's very ancient water that accumulated underground when the Sahara's climate was wetter. To put it simply, it's like there's a huge hidden reservoir of water beneath the desert. And because of wells and drilling, people have been able to use this water to survive, farm, and build communities. But the most amazing thing about Dakhla isn't just its water, but its incredibly long history. According to the Dakhla Oasis project, hundreds of ancient sites have been found in the area. There is evidence of old settlements, rock art, temples, houses, and places that people used during different periods. This means it's not just a resting place in the desert. For a very long time, it has been home to many generations. There was even a time when this place was wetter. According to some studies, there was a part of Dakhla that used to have a large lake thousands of years ago. So even though it's a desert now, the place looked very different in the past. There was more water, more plants, and more animals that could live there. Over time, the climate changed, and the Sahara dried up. Some people left and moved to better places like the Nile Valley. But Dakhla never completely disappeared. It remained an oasis because there was still water underground. There's another reason why Dakhla is special. There wasn't just ordinary life here in the past. There were temples, schools, ancient documents, houses and streets and signs that a well-organized community lived here. In some parts of the oasis, ruins from the Roman period were found. There are old settlements that show the place was once an important regional center. So it's wrong to think that an oasis is just a simple place to drink water. In Dakhla, the oasis became a place of education, religion, trade, and daily life. It's like a small civilization in the middle of the desert. And that's the reason why Dakhla ranks high on this list, because it shows the whole idea of an oasis most fully. It's not just water, it's not just trees, it's not just farmland. It's a long story of people, climate, and survival. But if Dakhla is like a vast world of life in the desert, the next one is like a place from another planet. This is Huacachina in Libya. When you see this from a satellite image, you wouldn't immediately think it's an oasis. It looks more like a big black mark in the middle of the pale Sahara Desert, and the reason for this is a volcano. The Wow of the Huacachina is a volcanic caldera inside the Sahara. A caldera is a large pit or depression formed due to volcanic activity. In the middle of it, there is a volcanic cone. Around it, there is dark volcanic ash and basaltic rocks spread across the desert. That's why from above, you can clearly see its large, dark circle. It's like there's a burned circle in the middle of the sand. But what's even more surprising is that inside this volcanic area, there are small lakes. According to NASA and the Smithsonian Global Volcanism Program, there are saltwater lakes inside Wadi Huacachina, and around the lakes there are also plants. So just imagine what it looks like. Black soil from the volcano, pale desert all around. There's water inside. There are plants near the lake, and it's in the middle of one of the emptiest parts of North Africa. It's not like a normal oasis with palm trees and a village. This one is more unusual. It's like a volcano, desert, lake, and a bit of life all combined in one place. So when you look at it, nothing seems to match. It should be hot and very dry. But there's water. The surroundings should look dead, but there are plants. It should just be desert. But there's a volcanic crater in the middle, and that's what makes Wadi Wow Animus so unique. It's not a big farming oasis. It doesn't have a long green belt like Dakhla. It's also not an ancient city oasis like Gadames. It's an isolated natural wonder. It's far, quiet, and looks unique even from space. There are also studies saying that it's hard to determine exactly how young or old its volcanic features are. Because the climate is extremely dry, erosion is slow. This means that rocks and craters can look new even though they've been there for a long time. But even if all the details about its age aren't clear yet, one thing is certain. Wow Animus is one of the most unique oases in the world. Because of this, you won't just see water here. You'll see how the fire of the volcano and the water of the oasis met in the middle of the desert. And in a place where you would expect to see only sand, rocks, and heat, suddenly a dark crater appears with lakes and plants inside. So if there's an oasis that really looks like it doesn't belong in our world, this is it. Wow Animus is not just a simple place with water. It's proof that even in the harshest parts of the desert, nature can still create a place that's hard to believe, but truly exists.